It was a bright, sunny afternoon in a little town. This wasn't a big city with tall buildings and busy streets. No, this was a small place where people waved at each other and knew everyone's name, or at least, they thought they did. The birds were singing, the sky was blue, and everything seemed peaceful. But something big was about to happen, something no one saw coming. Linda Carter walked slowly down the sidewalk. She wasn't fast because she couldn't see. Linda was blind, and she used a long white cane to feel her way. Tap, tap, tap it went as she moved along. The cane helped her know where the cracks in the sidewalk were or if something was in her way. To most people in town, Linda was just a quiet old lady. She didn't talk much, and she didn't bother anyone. She lived in a small house with flowers out front, and she liked to sit on her porch sometimes. People would pass by and say, "Hi, Linda," and she'd nod back with a little smile. That's all they knew about her. But oh, they didn't know the real story. Linda had a secret, a big one, and it was about to turn everything upside down. On this sunny day, Linda was just trying to get home. She had gone to the little store down the street to buy some bread and milk. Now, with her bag in one hand and her cane in the other, she was walking back. Her steps were slow but steady. She didn't rush because she didn't need to. She liked the warm sun on her face and the sound of kids playing somewhere nearby. It felt like a normal day. But then, trouble came rolling in loud and fast. A group of bikers zoomed up the street. Their big motorcycles made a roaring sound, like lions waking up from a nap. The engines growled and shook the air. There were 5 of them, all wearing black jackets and helmets. They looked tough, and they liked it that way. People in town didn't mess with them because they were loud and a little scary. The leader of the group was a guy named Spike. He had a big beard and a mean grin, like he was always looking for trouble. And today? He found it, or so he thought. The bikers slowed down when they saw Linda. She was just walking, minding her own business, but Spike didn't care. He saw her white cane and her slow steps, and he thought she'd be fun to pick on. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, but his voice wasn't nice. It was rough and sneaky, like a bully teasing someone on the playground. He leaned off his bike a little, staring at her. The other bikers laughed, their voices loud and sharp. It cut through the quiet afternoon like a knife. Linda didn't jump or run. She just kept walking, her cane tapping the ground. Tap, tap, tap. She didn't look scared at all, but the bikers didn't notice that. They were too busy laughing and thinking they were so smart. To them, Linda was an easy target. She couldn't see them coming, and she couldn't fight back, or so they thought. They saw an old lady with a cane, someone who looked weak and alone. "Hey, lady, where you going so slow?" one of them shouted. More laughter followed. They revved their engines, making them roar even louder, just to see if she'd jump. Linda didn't. She just kept her head up and her steps steady. She was used to people being mean sometimes. It happened when you couldn't see. Some folks thought it made you less of a person. But Linda wasn't less. Not even close. What the bikers didn't know, what no one in town knew, was that Linda wasn't alone in this world. She had someone special, someone strong, someone who cared about her more than anything. And that someone was about to show up in a big way. The bikers thought they were the toughest guys around. They thought they could do whatever they wanted, and no one would stop them. But oh, they were so wrong. A storm was coming, and it wasn't the kind with rain and thunder. It was the kind that hits you when you least expect it, the kind that makes you wish you'd been nicer. Linda's secret was like a surprise hiding in a box. You couldn't see it from the outside, but once it popped open, everything changed. The bikers didn't see any danger. They didn't hear any warning bells. All they saw was a quiet lady with a cane, and all they heard was their own laughter. They had no idea what was waiting just around the corner. They didn't know that messing with Linda was the biggest mistake they could make. Imagine you're watching this happen. Picture the sunny street, the little town, the bikers being loud and rude. What do you think happens when someone picks on the wrong person? What if that person has a secret that's bigger and stronger than anyone guesses? That's what's coming, and it's going to be wild. This isn't just a story about a quiet lady and some noisy bikers. It's a story about surprises, about standing up, and about what happens when you think you're tough but find out you're not. So, stick around, because this is about to get good. Linda's not as alone as she looks, And those bikers? They're in for a shock they'll never forget. What do you think's going to happen next? Who do you think is coming to help Linda? Let's find out together, because this sunny day is about to turn into something no one in this little town will ever forget. The bikers were loud and mean, and their leader was the worst of them all. His name was Spike, and he was a big guy with a hairy beard and a shiny black motorcycle. He looked like he could scare anyone just by staring at them. On this sunny afternoon, Spike decided he didn't like Linda walking so slow. He leaned off his bike, grabbed an empty soda can from his pocket, and threw it right at her feet. It clattered on the sidewalk with a loud clang. "Move it, lady," he barked, his voice rough and bossy. He grinned big, showing his teeth, while his buddies laughed like it was the funniest thing ever. Linda stopped walking for a second. Her white cane kept tapping the ground, tap, 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 like it always did. She didn't look mad or scared. Her face stayed calm, like the still water in a puddle after rain. "I'm just trying to get home," she said. Her voice was soft, almost quiet, like she didn't want to fight. But Spike didn't care about that. He wasn't the kind of guy who listened. "Ah, poor little blind granny," he said, making his voice sound whiny and fake. Then he pushed the gas on his bike and made the engine roar super loud, vroom, vroom. It was so loud it shook the air, and this time, Linda jumped a little. Spike laughed even harder, and his friends joined in, howling like a pack of wild dogs. The street wasn't empty. There were people around, folks walking their dogs, kids riding bikes, a lady pushing a stroller. But when they heard Spike yelling and saw the bikers being mean, they turned away. Some looked at the ground. Some walked faster to get out of there. They acted like they didn't see anything at all. Nobody said, "Hey, stop that," or "Leave her alone." They just kept going, pretending it wasn't happening. Linda wasn't surprised. This wasn't the first time people had been mean to her. Sometimes kids would tease her because she couldn't see. Sometimes grown ups would sigh and act like she was in their way. She was used to it. But today felt different. Something about the way she stood there, so steady and quiet, made you wonder if she had a trick up her sleeve. Spike and his crew didn't stop. They kept riding their bikes in slow circles around her, like sharks swimming around a little fish. Their engines growled, and their tires squeaked on the road. "Hey, old lady, why don't you run home?" one of them shouted. Another tossed a gum wrapper at her, and it floated down to the ground near her feet. They kept throwing words at her, too mean words, loud words, words that stung like rocks hitting you. "Blind granny," they called her. "Slowpoke." They thought it was a big game. They thought they were so tough, so cool, sitting on their big bikes and picking on someone who couldn't fight back. To them, Linda was weak. She couldn't see them. She couldn't chase them. She was just an old lady with a cane, all alone. That's what they thought. But oh, they were so wrong. Linda didn't cry or yell back. She didn't even frown. She just stood there, her cane tapping, her head tilted a little like she was listening to something far away. If you looked close, you might have seen her lips move just a tiny bit, like she was whispering to herself. What was she thinking? Did she know something they didn't? Spike didn't notice. He was too busy showing off. He revved his engine again, vroom, and leaned closer to her. "What's the matter? Too scared to talk?" he teased. His buddies laughed some more, slapping their hands on their bikes like it was the best joke ever. They didn't see how Linda stayed so calm. They didn't wonder why she wasn't afraid. They were too busy being loud and mean. The truth was, Linda wasn't weak at all. She'd been through tough stuff before, way tougher than a bunch of noisy bikers. She'd learned how to stay strong, even when people were rude. And she wasn't as alone as they thought. Somewhere out there, someone was watching out for her. Someone big. Someone who didn't like bullies one bit. But Spike and his crew didn't know that. They didn't even think about it. They saw an old lady with a cane, and they figured she was an easy target. They didn't know a storm was brewing, a storm they couldn't outrun on their fancy bikes. A sunny day, a quiet street, and a group of bikers being loud and nasty. Linda's just standing there, taking it, while everyone else looks away. What would you do if you saw this happening? Would you step in and say something? Would you tell Spike to knock it off? Or would you wait, holding your breath, to see if something bigger was about to unfold. Maybe you'd wonder why Linda wasn't scared. Maybe you'd think she's got a secret plan. And you'd be right to wonder, because this wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. Spike kept grinning, thinking he was the king of the street. His buddies kept laughing, thinking they were untouchable. They circled Linda one more time, their bikes rumbling like thunder. "See ya later, Granny," Spike yelled, tipping his head back with a big, ugly laugh. They thought they'd won. They thought they'd made her feel small. But Linda didn't feel small. She didn't feel scared. She just waited, her cane tapping, her face still calm. She knew something was coming, something that would wipe that grin right off Spike's face. The tension was building, like when you stretch a rubber band tighter and tighter. You know it's going to snap, but you don't know when. The bikers didn't feel it, they were too busy being jerks. But if you were watching, you'd feel it. You'd see how Linda stood tall, even with all that noise around her. You'd wonder what she was waiting for. And you'd be right to wonder, because the next part? Oh, it's going to be wild. What do you think happens when someone picks on the wrong person? Stick around, this is about to get good. The days kept going, one after another, and the bikers didn't stop being mean. Every single time Linda left her house, they showed up. If she walked to the little store to buy some bread or milk, there they were. If she sat on her porch to feel the sun on her face, they'd come rolling by. Their big motorcycles roared loud, and their voices were even louder. "Hey, blind lady," they'd shout. "Still slow as a turtle." Then they'd laugh like it was the funniest thing in the world. Spike, the leader, was always the loudest. He'd rev his engine vroom, vroom, and grin like he was the boss of everything. His buddies laughed along, following him like a pack of noisy dogs. But Linda? She didn't cry or yell. She didn't shake her fists or run inside. She wasn't just sitting there feeling sad or scared. No way. Linda had something going on, something sneaky and smart. Every time the bikers came by, she'd do the same little thing. She'd reach into her pocket, pull out her phone, and press a button. Then she'd hold it up to her ear and whisper real quiet, so quiet you could barely hear her. "They're back," she'd say. That's it, just those two words. Then she'd put the phone away and keep doing what she was doing, like nothing big was happening. Who was she talking to? Nobody knew. Not the bikers, not the people in town, not even the nosy lady across the street who liked to peek out her window. It was a mystery, and it made you wonder. What was Linda up to? The bikers didn't notice her phone trick. They were too busy being loud and rude. They thought Linda was weak because she couldn't see, and they thought picking on her was fun. Day after day, they kept it up. One time, they threw an apple core at her porch while she was sitting there. Another time, they honked their horns so loud it made the birds fly away. They'd circle her on their bikes, shouting mean things like, "Go home, Granny," or "You're too old to be out here." They laughed and laughed, thinking they were so tough. But every time, Linda stayed calm. She'd tap her cane on the ground, tap, 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 and wait. She didn't look mad. She didn't look scared. She just waited, like she knew something was coming. And little by little, you could tell something big was building up. Then one day, Spike decided to take it further. He was feeling extra bold, like he wanted to show off even more. Linda was walking home from the store, her bag of groceries in one hand and her cane in the other. The sun was shining, and the street was quiet until the bikers showed up again. Spike pulled his bike right in front of her and stopped. The engine growled as he turned it off. Then he hopped off, his big boots stomping on the sidewalk. He strutted up to Linda, standing so close she could probably hear him breathing. "Hey, old lady," he said, his voice mean and loud. He looked down at her cane, and a sneaky idea popped into his head. Quick as a flash, he grabbed it right out of her hand. He yanked it away and held it up high, waving it in the air like a prize. "What you gonna do about it?" he taunted, laughing in her face. His buddies cheered and clapped, thinking it was the best thing ever. Linda didn't move. She stood still, her hands empty now, her grocery bag hanging by her side. Her head tilted a little, like she was listening to something far away. Spike kept waving the cane around, twirling it like a toy. "Look at this," he yelled to his friends. "She can't even stop me." They laughed some more, their voices bouncing off the houses. The people on the street, folks walking by or sitting on their porches, looked away again. Nobody said a word. They didn't want trouble with Spike and his crew. But Linda? She wasn't like them. She didn't look worried. She didn't beg for her cane back. She just stood there, steady and quiet, like a rock in a storm. And then, something happened. It started small, so small the bikers didn't even notice. In the distance, there was a sound, a low rumble, like thunder way off in the sky. It wasn't a motorcycle this time. It wasn't one of their loud engines. It was something different, something deeper. The noise grew a little louder, a little closer, rolling toward the street like a wave coming to shore. Spike was too busy showing off to hear it. His buddies were too busy laughing to care. They kept yelling and joking, thinking they were in charge. But Linda? She heard it. Her head tilted a tiny bit more, and if you looked real close, you'd see something amazing. Her lips twitched just a little into a tiny, tiny smile. It wasn't a big grin or a laugh. It was small, sneaky, like she knew a secret nobody else did. What was that sound? Who was making it? The bikers didn't have a clue. They were too caught up in their game. Spike tossed the cane up in the air and caught it, still teasing. "Come on, Granny, take it back," he said, holding it just out of her reach. He thought he was so clever. He thought he'd won. But that rumble kept getting louder, closer, stronger. It wasn't thunder. It wasn't a bike. It was something else, something big. Linda's smile stayed, small and quiet, like she could hear it coming and knew what it meant. The bikers didn't see it yet, but they were about to find out they'd messed with the wrong lady. "Can you guess who's coming?" "Think about it," Linda's been whispering on her phone, staying calm, waiting for something. What if she's not as alone as everyone thinks? What if someone's been listening to her, ready to step in? This is where it gets juicy, so hold on tight. The bikers think they're tough, but they're about to learn a lesson they'll never forget. Stick with me, this is just the start of the fun. The rumble that Linda heard wasn't just a little noise anymore. It got loud, really loud, like a lion roaring in your face. Then, all of a sudden, a big black truck came speeding around the corner. Its tires screeched on the road, making a high-pitched squeal that made everyone turn their heads. The truck stopped right there on the street, and the door flew open. Out stepped a giant of a man. He was tall, so tall he looked like he could touch the sky. His shoulders were wide, and his arms were thick, like he was made of bricks stacked together. His name was Jake Carter, and he wasn't just any guy. He was Linda's son, and he was a pro MMA fighter. That means he was a champion who fought in a ring and won against guys way bigger than anyone on that street. He was strong, tough, and not someone you'd want to mess with. The bikers stopped moving. They froze like statues, their mouths hanging open wide. Spike, the big loud leader, still had Linda's cane in his hand, but he didn't look so tough anymore. Jake marched straight toward them, his boots thumping on the ground like a drum. His face was serious, and his eyes were locked on the bikers. He didn't look scared or worried, he looked ready. "Mom," he called out, his voice deep and strong, like it could carry across the whole town. Linda turned her head a little, still standing there calm as ever. "Right here, Jake," she said, her voice soft but clear. She didn't sound surprised or upset. It was like she knew he was coming all along. Spike's grin, the big, mean one he'd been wearing, was gone in a flash. His face went pale, like he'd seen a ghost. "Wait, what?" he stammered, his voice all shaky and small. The cane slipped out of his hand and hit the ground with a loud clack. He didn't even try to pick it up. It was like he forgot it was there. Jake didn't say anything back. He didn't need to. He just stepped right between Linda and the bikers, standing tall like a wall. His hands curled into fists, and he cracked his knuckles, pop, pop, pop. The sound was sharp and loud, and it made the bikers jump. Then he spoke, his voice low and growly, like a bear waking up. "You've been messing with the wrong family," he said, staring right at Spike. The bikers didn't know what to do. They'd been so loud and bossy before, circling Linda and laughing like they owned the street. But now, they looked like scared little kids caught stealing cookies. Spike's buddies stopped laughing. Their eyes got big, and they stepped back a little, bumping into their bikes. They weren't tough anymore. They were shocked. Jake was huge, way bigger than any of them, and he didn't look happy. He'd knocked out guys twice Spike's size in the ring, guys with muscles and mean faces. These bikers. They weren't even close to that. They'd picked on Linda because they thought she was weak and alone. But now they saw the truth, Linda wasn't alone. She had Jake, and Jake was a champion. The people on the street, the ones who'd looked away before, couldn't ignore this. The lady with the stroller stopped pushing it. The kids on their bikes stopped pedaling. The old man walking his dog turned around and stared. They'd all pretended not to see when the bikers were being mean to Linda. They'd acted like it wasn't their problem. But now, they couldn't look away. Their eyes were glued to Jake, this giant man standing up for his mom. Some of them whispered to each other. "Who's that?" they asked. "Is that Linda's son?" Nobody knew before, but they sure knew now. The quiet lady with the cane had a secret, and that secret was standing right there, ready to set things straight. Spike tried to fix it. He forced a laugh, but it didn't sound real. It was shaky and weak, like he was nervous. "We were just kidding, man," he said, holding up his hands like he was saying sorry. "No big deal, right? Just a joke." His buddies nodded fast, agreeing with him. "Yeah, just fun," one of them said. But Jake didn't smile. He didn't laugh. He didn't move. He just stood there, staring at them with those hard eyes. His fists were still ready, and his knuckles cracked again. Pop, pop. It was too late for excuses. Jake wasn't here to hear sorry or "we didn't mean it." He was here because they'd been mean to his mom, and that wasn't okay with him. Linda stood behind Jake, still calm and quiet. She didn't say much, but you could tell she wasn't surprised. She'd been whispering on her phone for days, saying they're back to someone. Now you knew who. Jake. She'd been calling her son, letting him know what was going on. And Jake? He'd been listening. He'd been waiting for the right moment. Now he was here, and the bikers were in big trouble. They thought Linda was an easy target, someone they could tease and push around. But they didn't know about Jake. They didn't know he was a fighter, a champion, a son who'd do anything for his mom. The air felt heavy, like before a big storm. The bikers were stuck. They couldn't run, their bikes were right there, but they didn't dare move. They couldn't fight, Jake was way too strong. They just stood there, looking at him, then at each other, then back at him. Spike's hands were still up, like he was begging Jake not to be mad. But Jake didn't care about that. He took one step closer, and the bikers flinched. They didn't know what he'd do next, and neither did the crowd. Everyone was watching, holding their breath, waiting to see what happened. What do you think happens next? Picture it, Jake standing tall, the bikers shaking, Linda smiling that tiny smile. This is the big moment, the one where everything changes. The bikers thought they were tough, but they were wrong. Linda's son is here, and he's not playing around. Let's find out what he does, because this is about to get even better. Jake didn't hit anyone, not yet. He didn't even need to swing his big fists. All he did was stare at the bikers with his tough, serious eyes, and that was enough. One look from him, and they turned into scared little kids. The bikers stumbled over each other, trying to get away fast. Spike, the big loud leader, tripped over his own boots as he ran to his bike. "Let's get out of here," he yelled, his voice all high and shaking. The other bikers jumped on their motorcycles, their hands shaking as they turned the keys. The engines coughed and sputtered, then roared to life. In seconds, they were speeding down the street, their bikes wobbling because they were in such a hurry. They didn't look tough anymore, they looked silly and scared. But Jake wasn't finished yet. He wasn't going to let it end with just a stare. He bent down and picked up Linda's white cane from the ground where Spike had dropped it. He dusted it off with his big hand and gave it back to her. "Here, Mom," he said, his voice soft now, not growly like before. Linda took it and smiled a little, tapping it on the ground, tap, 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 like she always did. Then Jake turned around to face the crowd. All those people who'd ignored Linda before? They were watching now, their eyes wide. Jake stood tall, his arms crossed, and asked in his deep voice, "Anyone else got a problem with my mom?" Nobody said a word. It was quiet, super quiet, like the whole town was holding its breath. No one dared to speak. They all just looked at Jake, then at Linda, then back at Jake. Pure, perfect silence. After that day, everything changed. Word spread fast, like when you tell a secret and it gets around school by lunchtime. Everyone in town heard what happened, how the bikers picked on Linda and how Jake showed up to stop them. The bikers didn't come back. Not the next day, not the next week, not ever. They were too scared to show their faces again. They knew Jake was strong, and they didn't want to mess with him or Linda anymore. The streets got peaceful again, and Linda went back to her quiet walks. She'd head to the store or sit on her porch, just like before. But now, things were different. People didn't ignore her anymore. They waved when they passed by. "Hi, Linda," they'd say, smiling big. Some even stopped to talk, asking how she was doing. They weren't rude or mean now, they were nice. They'd learned their lesson: don't judge Linda, or you might be sorry. Jake didn't leave right away. He stuck around town for a while, just to make sure everyone understood. He'd walk with Linda sometimes, his big shadow next to her little one. People saw him and remembered he was the champion who protected his mom. Nobody wanted to test him. They got the message loud and clear: Linda wasn't someone to pick on. She had Jake, and Jake wasn't playing around. After a few days, he went back to his fighting life, but everyone knew he'd come running if Linda needed him again. How's that for a turnaround? The bikers thought they were so big and tough, but they ran away like scared puppies. Linda got her quiet life back, and now people treated her right. Bet those bikers won't forget that day anytime soon. They learned the hard way not to mess with the wrong family. Linda and Jake showed the whole town something huge that day. They proved you can't always tell who's strong just by looking at them. Sometimes, the quiet people, the ones who don't yell or fight back, have someone big watching out for them. You never know who's got your back, or who's ready to step in and fight for what's right. Linda didn't look tough. She was just an old lady with a cane, walking slow and staying calm. But she had Jake, her son, a champion fighter who wouldn't let anyone hurt her. That's a big lesson: don't judge people too fast, because you might be surprised. The bikers learned that lesson the hard way. They were loud and mean, roaring around on their bikes like they owned the street. They thought they were the toughest guys around, picking on Linda because she couldn't see. They laughed and shouted, thinking no one could stop them. But when Jake showed up, everything changed. Those loud bullies turned into scaredy cats in seconds. Spike, the leader, went from grinning and teasing to tripping over his own feet, running away. The truth came out: they weren't so tough after all. The biggest cowards are sometimes the ones who make the most noise. When they saw Jake, they didn't even try to fight, they just ran. It's funny how fast things can flip when someone stands up for what's right. So, what does this mean for you? Next time you see someone getting picked on, stop and think. Maybe it's at school, on the playground, or even on your street. You might see a kid getting teased because they're small or quiet. You might see someone being left out or laughed at. Before you walk away or join in, think twice. That quiet kid might have a friend who's ready to help them. Or maybe they're stronger than they look, just waiting for the right moment to show it. The quiet ones, the ones who don't make a fuss, might have a champion waiting in the wings, someone like Jake, ready to step in and make things fair. You never know what's hiding behind a calm face or a slow walk. This story isn't just about Linda and Jake, it's about everyone. It's about how we treat people and what happens when we're wrong about them. The bikers judged Linda because she was blind and old. They thought she was weak, an easy target. But they didn't see the whole picture. They didn't know about Jake, or how much he loved his mom. They didn't think she could have someone so strong on her side. That's the thing, we don't always see everything. People can surprise you. The ones who seem small or alone might have power you can't imagine. So, be kind. Be fair. Don't be like the bikers, picking on someone just because you think you can get away with it. You might not see the storm coming until it's too late. And what about you? What would you do in a story like this? Would you be like Jake, standing up big and tall for someone you care about? He didn't wait or wonder, he showed up fast and made the bullies stop. He was brave and strong, ready to protect his mom no matter what. Or maybe you'd be like Linda, staying cool and calm even when things got tough. She didn't yell or cry, she waited, knowing help was on the way. Both ways are amazing. Jake's way is loud and bold. Linda's way is quiet and smart. They work together to show the world that bullies don't win. Which one feels like you? Maybe you're a little of both. Thanks for sticking with me all the way to the end. I'm so glad you came along for this ride. This story started with a quiet lady and some noisy bikers, and it ended with a big surprise and a happy ending. What did you think about it? Did you like how Jake scared the bikers away? Did you cheer when Linda got her cane back and everyone started being nice? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you say. Tell me if you'd stand up like Jake or stay cool like Linda. Or maybe you've got a story of your own where someone surprised you with how strong they were. Share that, too. This isn't goodbye, it's just see you later. I've got more stories coming, and I can't wait to tell them to you. Stories about surprises, about brave people, about bullies getting what they deserve. So stick around, okay? Hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet, and let's keep having fun together. Linda and Jake showed us something special. The quiet ones can have the loudest backup, and the meanest bullies can turn into the biggest runners. Keep that in your heart next time you're out in the world. You never know who's got a champion waiting just like Linda did. See you in the next one.